I still remember the way his voice echoed down the hallway that night. "Get out of my house, Tyler." Just 7 words, but they split my world in half. I stood there, suitcase in hand, my heart pounding against my ribs. The air smelled like burnt toast and cheap whiskey, his usual dinner lately. Mom had already left months before, said she couldn't take his temper anymore. I stayed behind, thinking maybe I could be the bridge that held what was left of our family together. I was wrong. That night, it was over something stupid, a missed call, a misunderstanding about the rent money. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about that. It was about years of resentment, about him seeing too much of Mom in me. He pointed at the door, jaw tight, eyes cold. "You think you're better than me, huh? Go find out what life's really like without Daddy's roof over your head." I wanted to say something, to remind him that I was his son, not his enemy. But the words got stuck in my throat. So I just walked out. The door slammed behind me with a sound that still echoes sometimes, even now. That was 5 years ago. The first few months were rough. I slept on friends' couches, picked up shifts at a coffee shop downtown, and tried not to think about the silence where my father's voice used to be. Every once in a while, I'd scroll through old photos, birthdays, fishing trips, Christmas mornings. We looked happy. But maybe we were just pretending back then. Life moved on. I moved on. By the time I turned 27, I'd built something for myself. A steady job at a tech company. A small apartment with real furniture. A girlfriend named Emily who didn't flinch when I talked about my past. She'd squeeze my hand and say, "You don't owe him anything, you know." I told myself she was right. But some part of me still wanted to believe that one day, he'd call. That one day, he'd say sorry. Then, one night, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. At first, I ignored it. But then came a text, "Tyler, it's your Aunt Lisa. Your dad's in the hospital. He's asking for you." My heart dropped. I hadn't seen my aunt in years, not since Dad pushed everyone away after Mom left. I called immediately, voice shaking. "What happened?" She hesitated before answering. "It's his kidneys. They are failing. The doctors say he doesn't have much time unless they find a match." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt cruel, cosmic irony, almost. The man who'd thrown me out now needed something only I might be able to give. Does he know you called me?" I asked. She sighed. "He didn't want me to, at first. But when the doctors said you might be a compatible donor, he changed his mind." Changed his mind. That was rich. Emily was sitting across from me at the kitchen table, watching my face twist through emotions I didn't even understand. "What's going on?" she asked softly. I told her everything. When I finished, she reached across the table, touched my hand. "You don't have to go," she said. "He made his choice years ago." "I know," I said quietly. "But maybe I need to see him, for me." A week later, I was standing in the hallway of St. Mary's Hospital, staring through a glass window at the man who used to be larger than life. He looked small now. Fragile. Tubes and machines hummed around him. His skin was pale, eyes sunken, the fire in them dimmed. When he saw me, he froze. His lips parted like he wasn't sure if I was real. "Tyler." I nodded slowly, stepping closer to the bed. "Yeah. It's me." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of the monitors beeping between us. Finally, he whispered, "You came." I almost didn't. His eyes filled with something that looked like shame. Or maybe fear. "I deserve that," he said, voice raspy. I wasn't a good father. I wanted to scream. To tell him he wasn't just not good, he was cruel, angry, broken. But instead, I just said, why now, Dad? Why reach out after all this time? He turned his head toward the window, blinking back tears. Because I'm scared, he said. And because I finally realized, you were the only person who ever really cared about me. That hit me harder than I expected. The next morning, the doctor came in with the test results. I was a match. When he told us, my dad looked at me like he didn't believe it. You'd really do it? He asked quietly. I don't know yet, I said. I need time. That night, I walked outside the hospital, sat on the cold bench under a flickering streetlight, and tried to make sense of it all. Could I really save the man who'd thrown me away? Was forgiveness worth the pain? Then my phone buzzed again, a message from Aunt Lisa. Your dad's getting worse. They say he might not make it another month. I looked back up at the hospital window where his room light glowed faintly. And that's when I realized, forgiveness wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. Still, the thought of going through surgery for the man who'd turned his back on me made my stomach twist. I didn't know what to do. But fate wasn't done testing me yet. Because 2 days later, I found out something that changed everything. 2 days later, I got a call from the hospital's transplant coordinator. Mr. Harris, she said carefully, we're finalizing compatibility assessments. Before we move forward, we need to review a few details about your family medical history. Something about her tone felt off, professional but hesitant. Sure, I said. What do you need to know? She hesitated. This might be sensitive, but are you aware that your father's file lists a different biological parent for you? For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. What? She repeated it, slower this time. It seems there's documentation suggesting you might not be his biological son. We need confirmation for the genetic matching process. The room started spinning. What do you mean I might not be his son? I'm so sorry, she said softly. I just wanted you to be aware before we proceed. I hung up before she could say anything else. My mind went blank. Was that why he kicked me out all those years ago? Did he know? That night, I drove back to the hospital, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't knock when I walked into his room, I just opened the door. He looked up, startled. Tyler. I stepped closer. You knew, didn't you? His expression shifted instantly, guilt washed over him like a wave. I don't know what you mean, don't lie to me. My voice cracked. The hospital called. They said I might not be your biological son. He froze. His eyes dropped to the floor. For a few seconds, all I could hear was the beep of the monitor. Then he whispered, I didn't want you to find out this way. So it's true? I asked. He nodded slowly. Your mom, she had an affair. I found out when you were 3. I took a test back then. You weren't mine. I just stood there, numb. So when you kicked me out, it wasn't about rent money, was it? He didn't answer. The silence was louder than any words could have been. I raised you like my own, he said finally. Even after I found out, I tried to forget. But every time I looked at you, I saw her. I saw the betrayal. And I hated her for it. But over time, I started hating you too. And that's something I've regretted every single day since. My chest tightened. I didn't even know what to feel, anger, heartbreak, disgust. So now that you're dying, suddenly I'm your son again. His eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I also know, you're the only one who ever loved me despite everything. I just wanted to see you one last time. I turned away, blinking back tears. He had stolen my childhood, my peace, and now he'd taken my identity too. I left the hospital without another word. For 3 days, I didn't answer his calls. Not that he made many, just 1 or 2 weak voicemails that ended in coughing and silence. Emily tried to comfort me, but I was a storm that couldn't be calmed. How am I supposed to help someone who lied to me my entire life? I said one night, pacing the living room. Maybe you're not helping him, she said quietly. Maybe you're helping yourself, to be free of all that anger. I didn't respond, but her words stuck in my head. A week later, Aunt Lisa called again. Tyler, he's getting worse. He doesn't have much time. Please, if you want closure, this might be your last chance. Closure. The word echoed in my mind like a dare. When I went back to the hospital, he was barely conscious. His breathing was shallow, his voice faint. He opened his eyes when he heard me sit down beside him. You came back, he whispered. Yeah, I said quietly. But not for you. I came for me. He nodded weakly. I understand. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The machines hummed between us like ghosts. Then, out of nowhere, he reached out a trembling hand. I know I can't ask for much, he said. But I just need to say this before I go. I loved you. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe not even the way you deserved. But I did. In my own broken way. Something inside me cracked. I wanted to stay angry, it was easier. Anger gave me control. But sitting there, looking at the man who'd built my childhood and destroyed it in the same lifetime, I couldn't find hate anymore. Just exhaustion. Why didn't you ever tell me the truth? I asked. Because I didn't want you to think you were unwanted, he whispered. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, even if you weren't really mine. That was the first time he said something that sounded like love. That night, I walked out of his room and sat in the hospital chapel. It was empty except for a flickering candle and the faint sound of rain outside. I sat there for an hour, staring at the stained glass window, trying to decide what to do. Could I still give him my kidney, knowing he wasn't my father? Would it make me weak, or strong? Then I thought about the kid I used to be, standing on the porch with a suitcase, hoping for love that never came. That kid deserved peace. He deserved closure. So I made the decision. The next morning, I told the doctors to schedule the surgery. Aunt Lisa cried when she heard. You're doing the right thing, Tyler. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was just tired of carrying all the pain he left behind. Before they wheeled him into the operating room, he reached for my hand. Why? He whispered. After everything I did to you, why? I looked him in the eyes and said, because I'm not you. He smiled weakly, a real smile this time. You're a better man than I ever was. For the first time, I believed him. The surgery was long. Complications, the doctors said. I woke up groggy, surrounded by beeping machines. Emily was there, holding my hand. How is he? I croaked. Her face fell. They are doing everything they can. My heart dropped. The doctor entered a few minutes later, his expression heavy. I'm sorry, Tyler, he said softly. There were complications during the transplant. Your father didn't make it. The room went silent. I didn't cry right away. I just stared at the ceiling, numb. After all these years of anger, distance, pain, it ended with silence. But as the weight of it sank in, tears finally came. And with them, something else, relief. I'd given him what he couldn't give me, grace. But that wasn't the end of the story. Because a week later, a letter arrived at my apartment. And what was inside changed how I remembered him forever. The letter came in a plain white envelope, my name written in shaky handwriting I recognized immediately. From the estate of James Harris, the return address read. My stomach twisted. I hadn't even been able to bring myself to go through his belongings after the funeral. Aunt Lisa had handled everything. So why was this coming to me now? I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope for what felt like an hour before I finally opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper and an old photograph, me at 5 years old, sitting on my dad's shoulders at the county fair, cotton candy smeared across my face. He was smiling, really smiling. I unfolded the letter. Tyler, if you're reading this, I guess I didn't make it. I asked Lisa to send this when the time was right. I know you probably hate me, and maybe you always will. But I wanted to tell you something before I go. I didn't kick you out because of the test. I kicked you out because I saw too much of myself in you, and that scared me. You were brave enough to walk away from things that broke you. I never was. For years, I told myself I didn't need forgiveness. But when I saw you again in that hospital, I realized that forgiveness wasn't mine to ask for, it was yours to give. And you gave it, even when I didn't deserve it. You didn't just save my life, Tyler. You saved whatever was left of my soul. Asterisk the money in my account, what little's left, it's yours. Not because I owe you, but because you deserve something better than what I gave you. Take care of yourself, kid. And know this, you were always my son. No blood test can ever change that. Love, Dad. I read it 3 times before I could even breathe again. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. For years, I'd carried anger like a second heartbeat, every breath, every thought colored by it. But right there, holding that letter, something inside me finally unclenched. He hadn't just been a bad man. He was a broken one. The next morning, I went to the park near my apartment, the one with the duck pond and the crooked bench by the willow tree. It was quiet, except for a few kids playing soccer in the distance. I sat down, pulled out the photo from the letter, and just stared. That picture, him carrying me, laughing like we had the world ahead of us, it felt like a lie back then. But now, I realized it wasn't. Maybe it was just a moment before everything went wrong. Sometimes, that's all we get, a few good moments to hold on to. Emily joined me a little later, coffee in hand. She didn't say anything at first. Just sat beside me, her hand resting gently on my knee. After a while, she asked, "Do you regret doing it?" The surgery. I thought about it. About the fear, the pain, the nights spent questioning whether it was worth it. And then I said, no. I think if I hadn't done it, I'd still be stuck hating him. This way. I got to let go. She smiled softly. He'd be proud of you, you know. Maybe, I said. Or maybe he just finally made peace with himself. Over the next few weeks, I started sorting through what he'd left behind. Old photos. Handwritten notes. Receipts from fishing trips we never took again after Mom left. Each piece felt like another little truth I hadn't known, reminders that life isn't just about what people do to you, but about what pain makes them become. Among the papers was another sealed envelope addressed to someone named Daniel Brooks. I almost threw it out, thinking it was a bank notice. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a short note. Danny, if you ever want to know your son, his name's Tyler. He deserved better than I could give him. If you can find it in your heart, tell him his mother loved him, even if she couldn't stay. My breath caught. Daniel Brooks. My real father. It wasn't anger that hit me this time, it was disbelief, then sadness. He'd known who my biological father was all along. And still, despite all the hate, he'd kept that secret. Maybe out of shame. Maybe out of love. For the first time, I didn't feel confused about who I was anymore. I wasn't defined by who raised me, or who left me. I was defined by who I chose to become. A month later, I found the courage to reach out to Daniel. He lived 2 states away. When I called, his voice was older, softer than I expected. "Tyler," he said quietly, after I explained. I didn't think I'd ever hear from you." We talked for hours that night. He told me stories about my mom, the good ones. The way she laughed too loud at old sitcoms. How she used to sing while cooking. How she loved me more than anything, even when her choices tore everything apart. I learned more about my family in that one phone call than I had in 27 years. When I hung up, I didn't feel angry or lost anymore. Just full of grief, of understanding, of something close to peace. A few weeks later, I visited my dad's grave. The grass had just started to grow over the fresh soil. I placed the photo from the letter on top, the one from the fair. "I found him," I said softly. "The guy who's technically my dad. But, you'll always be the one who raised me. The one who taught me how to throw a ball, how to fix a leaky faucet, how to keep going even when it hurts." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a second, it felt like he was there, not the angry man who'd kicked me out, but the father who'd once carried me on his shoulders. "I forgive you," I whispered. "And I hope wherever you are, you forgive yourself too." Life moved forward, as it always does. Emily and I got engaged the following spring. Aunt Lisa came to the wedding. She said Dad would have been proud. Maybe she was right. Sometimes, I still dream about that night he told me to leave. But now, when I wake up, I don't feel that ache in my chest anymore. I just feel thankful, because even the worst moments led me somewhere better. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It just stops it from controlling what comes next. I gave him my kidney, but what I really gave him was a chance to leave this world with something like peace. And in doing that, I gave myself something too: freedom. Sometimes, I visit the hospital where it all happened. There's a tree outside the transplant wing, small, but growing strong. I like to sit there for a while and think about how life has a strange way of coming full circle. I don't hate him anymore. I don't even resent what happened. Because if he hadn't thrown me out, maybe I never would have learned who I really am. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones who teach us what love really means. If this story hit you hard, tell me in the comments what you would have done. And if you believe in forgiveness, share this with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more stories that make you feel something real.